welcome to today's episode of Bump to Business Owner. It was with great pleasure I welcome Anna Mathur, a woman I feel I don't really need to introduce to my fellow mums listening to this podcast, the woman who makes us all relieved and feel actually normal with how we feel day to day. Anna is a psychotherapist, mum of three, speaker, and Sunday Times best-selling author. Passionate about taking therapy out of the therapy room, Anna Mathur is widely celebrated for her accessible mental health advice and the light bulb moments which she offers across her platforms. Often told through her own experiences, Anna has a unique approach to mental health, whether it's providing advice on anxiety, coping with overwhelm, or encouraging self-worth. Anna's latest book, Raising a Happier Mother, is out now and is a must-read for basically every mum, in my opinion. Thank you so much, Anna, and welcome. It's a pleasure to have you on today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Caroline. I was like sitting here shuffling away as you read these things out because I always find it a little bit awkward. I didn't write it myself, actually. Otherwise, that would make it doubly awkward, wouldn't it? But I'm good. I've done
No,
the school run. I've done a really cold walk to kick the day off, and
well done. You've had a
glad to be
productive
here.
day. Good, good already. And I know, I think it's great to big each other up on these ones. I think some podcasts, it's like, introduce yourself, and we might be like, oh no, it's just me, I'm Caroline. And so I was like, nope,
Yeah.
we're going to big Anna up for everything you do for
Oh,
us as a mum. Because I know
thank you.
I think you must have been one of the first mum Instagrams. I wasn't ready in my first pregnancy to really
Mm,
delve into that mum Instagram world. It was all a bit of a surprise. I think you're one of the first, and I was like, oh, this is normal. We all feel
yay.
like this. So, yeah, thank you for that. And so
You're so
Anna,
welcome.
how I
Yes.
like to start is kind of at the beginning. So your career to date. So when did you decide to become a
Mm.
psychotherapist? And did you think you'd always specialize in being, one that mothers all look up to?
Well, so I did psychology. I mean, we're going back quite a long way here at college. Is it college? Yeah, it was college. And I really loved it. And it was one of those topics. I think I did terribly in science. I thought I might want to be a doctor or something like that, but I basically
Oh.
just did so badly. There was absolutely no chance in hell I was going to get in anywhere. It was all about plants, and I thought it'd be about the human body. So that just, yeah, didn't go well. But I loved psychology. And I think going back even further, I've always grown up around my mum, who is particularly compassionate towards people. She has always been one of these people that encouraged us as children if someone was mean at school, both to validate the feelings that we had, but also to think a little bit more about what that child might be going through. Because if, you know, if you're a happy child, you're not going to be mean to another kid, right?
Yeah.
So we just always had this kind of drip fed insight into just looking a little bit beyond.
Yeah.
We went through loss as a child. My earlier years were filled with hospital visits. My younger sister had a brain tumor and she died when I was 10. So again, I had my mum's real insight into emotional validation and grief, and just learnt about the different ways that people experience the same things. So the way
Yeah.
that my dad dealt with my sister's loss, for example, was very different to the way that my brother and I did, and my mum. And it was just, yeah, I think just observing from a young age the different ways that as humans we experience things. So this kind of gave me this underlying interest in people and care for people. And I was the child that would dress up as a nurse and want to look after people and role play those caring roles. And having loved psychology, I went and did that at university. Spent most of my time partying, to be honest,
Good,
but I
as you
ticked all the
should.
boxes, as I should. I definitely, I did a lot of that, but I ticked all the boxes and I really, really enjoyed just learning a little bit more about the way that we work and the way that we tick. And then I went into advertising, which
As you
sounds like
do.
a bit of it sounds like a bit of a curveball, but I think psychology at that point, it felt like such a massive thing to go into. You'd have to go back to university again, do another kind of 3+ years. And I just wanted to go to London and have an experience of living just a working, a normal working life. So I went and did that for a while. I kind of liked it, kind of didn't. I was actually quite depressed at the time. Again, just really learning a lot about myself. Was a real people pleaser, a real perfectionist, very scared of getting things wrong, which actually made me really good at my job. And because I was a perfectionist, I just wanted to get everything right and make everyone happy. So it made me really good in the admin roles that I had in advertising. And I remember a real turning point actually was an appraisal. And I sat and I would cry over Waterloo Bridge every morning on the phone to my mum, just really unhappy. I'd cry in the toilets and then I'd put my lipstick on and go and sit at my desk and no one would know, So I was kind of living this real dual life. And I remember sitting in this appraisal and they said, you know what, Anna, if you just push it a little bit harder, you could get a promotion this time at the end of the year or next year. And I just remember feeling this sense of panic, this sense of I don't want to go deeper into this job. It's not right for me. No one seems to understand quite how hard it is and how hard I have to work. Didn't realize at that point that I had ADHD, but that's another story. So having to be really kind of stringent and just knowing that I was kind of living in opposition to the way that my brain worked. So that took me down a Google hunt. I looked at midwifery.
Oh,
I looked
really?
at, I looked at midwifery. I looked at psychology. I looked at different kind of colleges that do counseling, psychotherapy, and then I trained as a psychotherapist and absolutely loved it. And my drive was very much to help people. But what was incredibly humbling very early on in my training was that I realized I was the one that needed help. And they often say that when you train to be a therapist, you get the therapy that you need. And yeah, I learned that my way of feeling valid, like I deserved my place in the world, was to help people. And it was also a very, very clever way of overlooking my own need for people myself. So it's almost like training as a therapist meant that I'd never have to have therapy because I could just therapize myself. I'll sort myself out. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. Let's talk about you. Let's help you. And in truth, that was really humbling for me, really hard.
Thank you so much for sharing, because I can imagine, it makes perfect sense. You can't help others truly unless you've really done that work on yourself. And having gone through a year of doing loads of work, I've done EMDR and stuff, it's really hard, isn't it?
Really
And I
hard.
think that's something that's really good to make clear, that doing this work, if you need to do the work, is really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you are your biggest case study at the beginning of your training. And you're not necessarily seeing clients right at the beginning, but you're asking yourself all of these questions. Why am I thinking that? Why do I respond like that? What happened to me when that person said that? And I just felt all this rage rise up, or this panic rise up. And yeah, you become your own subject in a way. And it was incredibly humbling. I realized quite how broken I was underneath all this perfectionistic exterior that I felt protected me from my own messiness. And I think I've had to bring this real compassionate acknowledgement of my own vulnerability into motherhood. And that's what you see in my work, really, is that mixture of this therapeutic knowledge that I have, but also this real awareness that I get this privilege to see behind people's closed doors and behind the scenes. So I know, therefore, both clinically and professionally, that I am not alone in intrusive thoughts and rage in motherhood and conflicting feelings and anxieties. And it gives me the confidence to speak out, because I understand why I feel this way sometimes. I understand that I'm not the only one. So for me, it's not a taboo. So that's the real privilege of it all. And that's why you'll read so much about some of my experiences, because I can share them without the shame that other people might have,
Yeah, I wonder if it's, doing that work, like you said, it just makes you just a bit less filtered, and I think that can make some people feel really uncomfortable, but then you're like, "No, I've done the work." And it's like, I just don't find that uncomfortable anymore. And thank you so much for sharing your 20s as a girl living in London in their 20s, and friends as well. I think we can all really relate to that that period. Do you not think it's so discovering yourself
Yeah.
and like finding what works for you? And so you went to study psychotherapy. So then,
Mhm.
what were you doing when you became a mum for the first time? What was your job? As in, were you a working psychotherapist? Who was your
Uh-huh.
did you have a specialty?
Yeah, I was just in general practice. So I was working in GP surgeries in London. I was renting rooms in kind of therapeutic clinics. I was working for a clinic and helping run a clinic on Wimpole Street in London. So it was that kind of, I was working from different places as lots of therapists do. And I moved to Surrey from London, which was like going slightly back more to my comfort zone of Leafy Green. I grew up in a very kind of slightly remote village where, you know, it didn't have a shop. It was like 15 miles to school, and there were, yeah, we just made dens. And so moving down to Surrey felt like a great step for me. But I was still kind of going in and out of London a little bit. Had my first baby when I think it must have been like 28, 2014, and he was great. Like, he was kind of fairly predictable. I really struggled with the lack of control.
Even though
Having been,
that's so interesting
yeah,
because you've
yeah,
done the work. Did
yeah.
that
Oh,
then
I
bring up a
mean,
whole host of other
oh
things?
gosh, it's just these different seasons of life. Just, and I think this is what I've realized: different seasons of life where we're pushed and where more is called of us and where we're challenged just reveal often a whole nother layer. And I think this is so important to remember. Often we can feel like we've taken a massive step back. Often we feel like we've just totally been undone. Everything that we've been building of ourselves and we've been working on is just completely undone. And I think what I started to realize was that I wasn't taking a step back, I was taking a step up. You know, it was just, it's like when you start lifting new weights in the gym, the heavier weights, and you can feel really weak. You can think, oh my gosh, like, I can't lift this, when actually it's just you're asking more of yourself, you're being asked more of. So I think I found that so useful to reflect on in different seasons of parenthood and work, is that sometimes it feels like things are being undone when actually you're just having to step up, and it just feels hard for a bit, and we grow into it, and we need to have grace and patience for ourselves to find ourselves in that growing space again. I think we find ourselves there a lot more in motherhood, in the juggle, and I think if we don't recognize that, we can do what I did for a long time, which was just beat myself up. You know, what is
Mm.
wrong with me? I've done this stuff, I've learned this stuff about myself, or I felt like I was good at my work in this way, and why have I just taken so many steps back? But I think if we can see it through that lens of you're being asked more of, or you're asking more of yourself, and it, yeah, we're stretching, and that's not comfortable, and it can look like taking a step back, but in truth, it's not.
I love that. That's so great on the whole, like, you taking a step up. I've never thought of that.
Yeah,
That you're very good at reframing because I
I
had a
love a
little bit of a
reframe.
tricky period last September,
Mm,
October when a load of my friends had second babies and I knew it was going to be quite triggering. And I was like, I've done all the work and I had a real tricky month. And then I realized I was like, no, I'm just going through a new growth period. And
yes.
I told my husband, I was like, I'll be better on the other side. I just need this like
Mm,
time to step back. I've done the work to know I need this and this is what's happening and I'll get that. And it's so true because it's like, and they
yeah.
all happen again with something else.
It will. It will. And that is just, there are so many periods in life after I had my second child and kind of going into this space in my work where, yeah, you just think, oh, I thought I've done this, but actually,
Yes.
it's just stretching you in a different direction, and
Yeah.
you're going to grow more because of it. You're going to form new, if we think about muscles, because I love me a metaphor, you're going to form new fibers that weren't there before and new strength that wasn't there before. And yeah, I just think that's a great way of seeing it because it inspires compassion and patience instead of kind of criticism and
Yeah. Yeah.
frustration.
Yeah. And just being hard on yourself because then you're not going to be great for everyone around you if you're
Yeah.
beating yourself up constantly about just going through something that everyone, a season, as you put it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so like just going back to so then you had your children and what point did you kind of start really feeling comfortable? I can start sharing. This has been everything I've been going through. Because I think it was back when you started, I'd say 2014, you became a mum. It was still
Mm,
fairly new, this whole, I mean, I wasn't a
yeah,
mum at this point, so I wasn't really on the online mum world of
yeah,
Instagram and stuff.
yeah.
But when did you think I can share this kind of thing? This
Okay.
is like,
Yeah, so it wasn't really that planned and thought out. I downloaded Instagram properly in like 2016, right? I just had
oh,
my second baby and he had silent reflux.
no.
So for those mums of children that have silent reflux, it is a very different experience of early months of parenting. So I went into my second pregnancy really thinking that I'd done a great job, and I felt quite confident. I was really quite sick actually. I was medicated.
Oh
I had
God.
hyperemesis.
Oh
That was
no.
really, really rough. But you know,
Did you take medication
I
for it?
did,
Bless
yeah, which
you.
makes you very tired. So you're like,
Yeah.
would I rather be half asleep with a toddler, or would I rather be vomiting 10 times a day? It was a difficult one.
Yeah.
But again,
A hard choice that, yes.
but I was that perfectionist mother who was just didn't want anyone to worry about me. And I would literally just, I would just, people didn't really know the extent that I felt unwell and that I was unwell. And I would just cover it up. And I just wasn't like overtly honest about that experience. And that's what I went into my second, my second child, just totally again. I was just, everything I understood about myself was just challenged because I thought I was good. I thought I was a good therapist. I thought I was a good mother. And I had this baby that screamed the whole time. And my response was not that there was something going on for him, that there was something wrong with me, that it was me, that I wasn't feeding right, or I wasn't eating right, or I wasn't doing the routine right, or I wasn't comforting him correctly. Or it was, this, all of that questioning and blame of why things were so difficult. It was all to do with me because everyone around me was telling me that my baby was fine, but he wasn't
Really?
sleeping. Yeah. But then I think he would be in a carrier and I'd be at the GP and he'd be upright and he'd be asleep,
Yeah, okay.
so it'd be hard.
Of
He'd say, my
course you
baby
would,
doesn't
yeah.
stop screaming. And they're like, okay, yep, he kind of looks fine. And because he had silent reflux, he wasn't losing any weight. So I was feeding him
Oh,
relentlessly. And I
gosh.
was absolutely I was besides myself, feeling low, depressed, hopeless, helpless. I turfed my husband out of the bedroom. He would sleep in the attic, basically this attic room we had that didn't have a door on. We were in this tiny little like terraced house, so he could still hear everything and he was still awake. But I didn't want him to see how hard I found it because I
Mm.
was taking everything so as such a statement of how good a job I was doing. So even for him to see me broken and struggling in the middle of the night felt like an acutely vulnerable thing that I didn't want him to see.
Yeah.
So I felt, like, who am I to be a therapist? Or I can't even sort myself out. I'm broken. And I was still very much at this point, kind of plastering on the mascara after crying it all off and going out into the sunshine with my sunnies on and hiding much of this until
Lipstick on, everything's
the lippy
okay,
was
isn't it?
on. Yeah, don't worry about me. I'm
I don't
fine. And
relate
I
to that
wasn't.
at all.
I was broken into so many
Yeah.
pieces. And
And could your friends tell as well, but they couldn't?
they started noticing I was literally fraying around the edges. I think
Yeah.
there were points that I was getting 40 minutes a night sleep and I could barely
Oh,
string a
gosh.
sentence together. So there was a point where they said, look, can we take the baby? Can you go and speak to the doctor, please? Because we really don't think that you're okay and you're clearly not going to tell us about it. And again, it
That's
was
good
one of
friends.
these, the good mates, good mates. It was one of these times where I just felt kind of broke open all over again and
Mm.
just realized quite how much I needed people and realized quite how much I needed to be cared for and needed to let people support me. And I couldn't just be the one that was doing all the supporting and the caring and
Mm.
the listening, and that I needed that too. And that was again really uncomfortable for me. But has totally changed my life. And so I downloaded Instagram just as something to do in the middle of the night when I was awake. And I was moving house to a new build house, like a white box kind of house. And I wanted to find out what color to paint my walls. and what cushions to buy, you know. I wanted some inspiration. So I very much started Instagram as an interior design account. Not
Oh,
that I'm
did
an I
you?
did. It was all, honestly, nothing about motherhood. It was all basically screenshots of stuff, because I think my friends are a bit sick of me sending them screenshots of
Yeah.
lamps. So I put it all into this
Anna's not
Instagram
sleeping
account.
again. Here's another
Yeah,
lamp.
here's another lamp, another flipping curtain sample. So that's what my Instagram started out as, an interior design account, for inspiration. And then who knew, there's a whole community of people on Instagram who are moving into new build houses and sharing their journey. So
Yeah.
that's what I found. And
Yeah.
I, that's a little pocket of the community that I first stepped into.
And it helped you, I guess, at that point. It wasn't about motherhood. Maybe that was really helpful for
Yeah,
you.
yeah. And I found and Mumsy Mum, and I found Clemmy Telford, and I found some of the oldies on there. Not, they're not old, but you know what I mean, the first original mums
OGs.
that were on there, the OGs, sharing a bit more about motherhood in a way that resonate, the messier side of motherhood, the more honest, less shiny part of motherhood, which I think just really appealed to me at that point. And then I moved house, and I wasn't interested in lamps anymore, because I'd got my lamps and from Home Sense, and I painted my walls, and that was
Not an
that.
advert
So
there.
I was like, right,
Not an advert.
no, I flipping love a bit of Home Sense. My husband absolutely despises it, because we always come out with stuff that we never intended to get. Anyway, so I'd moved house, and I started sharing a little bit on Instagram lives, because that's when they just begun. And I remember doing a live because I'd moved in, and I was showing these followers, I can't remember how many, I had a few thousand then, this is my house that I've moved into, thanks for all your help. And they were like, what do you actually do? Because surely you don't just sit around all day screenshotting, paint. And I said, I'm a psychotherapist. And they started asking me questions, have you got any tips for anxiety? Have you got any thoughts on guilt? And I started sharing
I
some
love
of my
that. It's so
knowledge.
community-led, isn't it?
Yeah. So it was
Yeah.
just very much started sharing and answering questions, really. And I remember the very first post that I wrote about anxiety, and sharing that, because it wasn't about kitchen worktops and stuff anymore. And I thought, my gosh, this feels like venturing into a different, everyone's going to run away. Now, I'm not talking about paint, but some people did, and some people stayed, and more people came, and I just started sharing bits and tips and thoughts, and doing mental health lives, I'd call them. And I discovered that there is something, when you read something and it stays with you and it resonates. And I read this term psychoeducation. I was like, oh my gosh, I think that's what I do. And it's just sharing psychology in a way that is educative, that people can take on. So it's taking therapy out the therapy room. And I was just overjoyed that it was actually a thing that I was
A job you could have.
doing. And it really just kind of grew from there.
I love that. And there's so many things to touch on, especially that your first post was on anxiety. And I think something that was really key to talk about. I don't know how you felt about this as a psychotherapist, but from someone completely not in that world and then thrown into motherhood, it was all about postnatal depression. That was all anyone worried about. I did suffer a bit with my mental health and loneliness during my first pregnancy, but it was like all people cared about was postnatal depression, which has never been something I really get. If anything, I get anxiety. I'm a doer. I'm a like that sort of person. And then I had PTSD with my second. And I feel like a lot of your content, and now there's so much more out there that rage is a thing, things like that. And there's a lot of red flags for mothers to like pay attention to, or other people to pay attention to in mothers, before we even get to a point of postnatal depression, or it's never going to get to that point. It's just something else that could be supported and helped. And do you think, like, I think platforms like yours have really helped that? I just wanted your take on that.
Yeah, I just think, to be honest, I was just feeling feelings, and because when I started, I had a newborn and a toddler, and then I went and had my third in 2019. So I've been, for however many years, I've been a mum this year for 10 years, but in those kind of early years, for
10.
quite a long, I know, mad, unbelievable. Decade. I can't. I'm like, I flipping need a present. Like, forget my
You
son. I want
do.
a present. Yeah. So I was just, I think, recognizing emotions in myself and applying my understanding to them, and then talking about them, because I knew that if I was, and it was the pandemic, I think, brought so much to light, especially when it came to kind of rage in mums. And I just thought, what is wrong with me? I am so rageful. I fly off the handle, or I'm having to do everything I can to stop flying off the handle. And I don't see myself as an angry person. So what is going on? And I would contemplate that and think about it and think, wait a minute, I'm overwhelmed. I haven't been able to do the things that give me that release, whether ranting to a friend because we couldn't go anywhere, just against someone's washing machine at a play date when you're just kind of talking, these little things that are just such releases for us mums. And I just thought, man, if I'm feeling more ragey, like I'm not going to be alone. So I started, talking a little bit about it, gathering some data, some other experiences, and just really sharing this insight that often rage it's that kind of that peak of unmet need and unvalidated feeling. And I think for me, seeing it through that lens enabled again this compassion of like, I'm burnt out, I'm done in, I am not okay. What do I need? What do I need to ask for, to make space for? What feelings do I need to speak out? And that is so different to, oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? Why am I so angry? My kids deserve better. This kind of self-critical, almost bullying response.
Yeah.
And so I just, when it came to rage, for example, just would start sharing about that. Because I thought, if I'm being mean to myself because I'm not understanding why I'm feeling so angry, and it's so helpful to reframe it like this because it enables me to think, what can I do off the back of this? What can I learn? How can I support myself instead of criticizing myself? Then other people will need this too. And it was the same with intrusive thoughts, and just being understanding about intrusive thoughts, know what they were clinically, but when you have one about throwing a baby down the stairs, suddenly you're jarred in a whole new way, thinking, what the hell is wrong with me? I can't talk this out. What will someone say? They'll take my baby away, and all of this fear, when actually applying my knowledge to it and having that ability to reflect on thinking, this is my fight or flight. I have got this system in my body that says get away from a stressor, stop the stressor is stressing me out a lot. There's a part of me that wants it to stop, and there's this other maternal part of me that loves my baby and knows that I'm to keep him safe. And sometimes these things biologically, psychologically, are going to be at war with one another. And that's when we find ourselves having these thoughts that feel really conflicting with who we know we are and the values that we have and the love that we have. And again, just understanding it like that took the shame away, enough for me to talk about it, but also explain it more widely for other people that maybe didn't know that intrusive thoughts are our mind playing with like risk and responsibility and power and possibility. And when we're tired, they can get distorted. And when we're traumatized, they can be quite fueled. And this insight for me, this recognition was just so helpful and alleviated a lot of self-criticism and shame. So yeah, I then just wanted to share that with other people so that hopefully it might do that for them.
It's very empowering, isn't it? Because it's a bit of a cliche thinking, sound awful, like think of people like angry mums, oh, they're just being an angry mum, an angry wife. And it's like, it's actually empowering for us to find, well, why are we like that?
Yeah.
And what can we do about it, and
Yeah.
normalize it is the first thing, and then like find what we need to not, because none of us are angry.
Yeah,
Like,
we're scared actually. And if we really think about it, often anger is a response to feeling threatened. So there's a part of you, a little you inside going, I'm terrified, I'm scared, I'm going to fight because I don't know what else to do. I might feel alone or misunderstood. I'm depleted. I've got nothing left. I can't regulate my emotional response to this stress. And again, when we start seeing it like that, instead of I'm just angry, what's my problem or what's her problem, we start seeing some of that vulnerability, and it gives us a more compassionate response, so we're likely to actually tend to ourselves and mother ourselves instead of just get mad.
hugely. I'm wondering as well, do you think I'm only in the early years, so I have no reference point yet. And obviously, most people I know are in the early years.
Mm,
But thinking because of my own experience of PTSD, but also there's a lot of women that suffer birth trauma. And
yeah.
so if I went into flight or fight zone when we almost lost our child, so obviously
Mm,
anger was a symptom, which I can now be a
yeah.
lot kinder about during that period. And how anger represented and things. But do you think in the early years it's a lot more of apparent for mothers, that
Yeah.
anger, because of things
Yeah.
that can happen to them during that stage?
Absolutely. So that, that trauma, that feeling of emotional invalidation, either by ourselves or by other people, that feeling of being misunderstood, but also when we're already, our body is already stressed. So when we're tired, we're hormonal, um, those things are already just navigating a whole new period of life, right? And often pressuring ourselves to know what we're doing, when it's totally understandable that we've got to feel our way through and grow as we go. It's understandable then that we find it hard to regulate and anchor some of these feelings, because that takes energy. It takes energy to calm ourselves. It takes energy to rationalize anxious thoughts. It takes energy to feel that rage rise up and think, what do I actually need in this moment? I'm
Yeah.
not okay. You know, that takes energy, and it takes
Mm,
a beat. It requires a beat and a breath. And often when we're stressed and we're overwhelmed, we don't have that. We don't have that opportunity. We're just reacting left, right, and
mm,
center because we're hanging by a thread,
yeah.
you know? So yeah, definitely. It's a lot
And I
more.
think hormones is such a valuable thing to bring up there.
Oh
Now we
yeah.
know more, because in the past it's been like, oh, PMT. And now it's starting to be like, actually, let's honor my cycle and praise that
Yes.
and realize I am more angry during, like, just before my
Yeah.
period. and
Yeah.
and then things like breastfeeding as well, where your cycle's all over the place. You might not have one. And it's of course, so you can't, that's even more reason you can't take a breath, because your hormones just
Yeah.
aren't in that place.
Yeah. And if our attitude towards rest, and this is something else that I'm so passionate about talking about, because this has totally been changing my life. And it's been a very conscious thing where I've had a couple of really messy burnouts, which is a whole nother topic, especially for business owners and mums.
We'll do another podcast
Oh
on
yeah, we
burnout,
need
shall we?
another one on that. We need another one on that. But it's our attitude towards rest, you know, because so often people have guilt around rest, and we're not seeing it as something that doesn't necessarily require us to have a nap or just to lay us around on the sofa, but it's, where are you rushing where you don't need to be? Where are you
Yeah.
setting your standards where they just are not attainable, and you're going to be criticizing yourself? Where are you multitasking because you think you're being productive, but actually it's a really stressful way of and unproductive way of doing things? Where can you alleviate some of that pressure? Because yeah, we can't get a lot of rest to get that, that opportunity to think about how we're reacting. So how can we build it into our lives? How can we live slightly more restfully, even if we
Yeah.
can't get more sleep? How are we spending our time? Because when we're on social media and we're scrolling, our bodies, our nervous systems are
Yeah.
stressed because we
They're
don't know
still
what
being
we're going to get
activated.
next.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
We could get a cute picture of a cute puppy, or you could get a traumatic birth story that resonates with your own, and it sends you on this spiral, and
That's
suddenly you're
so
there.
true.
You don't know
Yeah.
what you're gonna your nervous system is holding its breath when
Mm.
you're on social media. And if you look at the difference in heart rate variability between going on social media and reading a book on your Kindle, totally different. One is restful, one is stressful. You could be lying on the sofa thinking you're resting, when actually doing one over the other puts you in a totally different state. So it's
And
stuff like this.
yeah. And how do you personally for you, how do you proactively put in your rest? Because I
Mm,
meditate, but I know that's
yeah.
so hard to tell people to start to
Yes.
meditate. You
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
That's a proactive choice you have to make yourself. But how do you do it?
So
Find that rest time.
meditation. So I do, at the minute, we get up early. My husband and I get up early. He goes downstairs. I stay upstairs, and I sit on my yoga mat and I light a candle. And this is normally like 6 o'clock in the morning. My kids are at an age
Wow.
now where they don't barrel into our
Yeah.
room until 7,
So
right? Because
that's a new season that I'm
it's a
looking
new
forward to at
season.
some point.
Absolutely. I mean, it's often quite fraught. I normally have someone in with me. I'm normally in and out telling them to get into their rooms. So it's not as idyllic as it sounds, but I
Mm.
do like engage in like spiritual practice. I like read devotionals. I do some like meditation. I do like a little bit of yoga, and I've got this totally smug cold plunge thing outside the back door, right?
Do
So
you? Oh,
yeah, so it's been like 3 degrees,
I'm jealous.
and I love it because you have to be so disciplined, and then you can transfer that to other parts of your life. And it's just this reminder to breathe, because I breathe my way through that 2 minutes when everything in me is telling me to get out. And my middle son, who's 7, he's autistic, so he has a lot of meltdowns, right? It's the hardest thing I've ever,
for you.
yeah, it's so hard. So I then use that technique of just like breathing and thinking, this is hard, but it will pass. It is hard. So I find that really transferable. So at the moment, that is what we're doing, and I'm finding that really, really helpful. But other things, just like slowing down around the house. I'm like, why am I running from room to room, Anna? What are you doing? I'm telling my body that I'm at threat. My nervous system thinks I'm being chased. And massively putting boundaries around my phone usage, my emails, and my social media, and thinking, do I really want to step into the office right now? Do I really want to open my DMs? Do I really want to open my email and be thinking about work? So I have arrow words, my new favorite. So I have crosswords and arrow words to hand, because if I do that,
arrow words.
oh my gosh, oh Caroline, you need to get involved. They're like crosswords, but the questions are in the little boxes in the grid thing, so you don't have to keep looking over the other page. Love it.
Okay, I'll look into
But
it.
yeah, but if I'm sat on the sofa with my kids, right, and I'm on my phone, my head's in that zone.
Yeah.
If they talk to me, I have this stress in my body, right? Because my head's in that zone, they're pulling me out to a different zone, and it's like this tug of war. Whereas if I'm reading a book or doing an hour word, you're so much more interruptible.
Yeah, I've
You know,
noticed that actually. I
yeah,
started reading a bit during
yeah,
downtime, and I'm like,
exactly.
this is a lot less antisocial than,
Yes,
because yes, I don't want to watch another Julia Donaldson for half an hour. But
yes,
if I read during it, I'm still more present.
yes. And your body is calmer. And
Mm,
another thing that I've stopped, so again, these aren't all sitting down on the sofa kind of things, but I've stopped drinking for 6 months to see what that does to me. And again,
mm,
it's one of these things that for years I thought, this is my rest, this is my cut off, this is my treat. When actually understanding what it does to my body, understanding
yeah.
what it's doing to my heart rate variability, which is, your body's ability to respond to and adapt to stress, it's not restful at all. I'm
No.
actually trashing all of this lovely meditation that I'm doing, these deep breaths that I'm doing. I'm thinking I'm relaxing on the sofa when actually my body is stressed and my
Yeah.
sleep is trashed. So
Oh,
again,
it's terrible for sleep. I've had to go through
terrible.
a process of
Yeah.
learning that as well.
Yes, absolutely. So whilst sometimes inside I feel like I am a toddler saying, "Oh, I want a glass of wine," I know that it is actually the biggest gift I've ever given myself and my children,
Mm.
because it makes me a little bit more patient.
Have you stopped
Um,
drinking now then, or is it
yeah, so
just
I've
oh,
stopped drinking. So I
fantastic.
haven't drunk now for about 3 months, and I've got another 3 months of I'm not drinking for 6 months, and then I'm going to reassess. And I think I probably will just stop, because I just can't see, well, the benefits. I don't want to let go of the benefits. Um, I'd love to be maybe, have a glass of wine once a month or something, but I don't know. I need to see if I'm the kind of person that can do that, or whether I'd be leaning
Yeah.
towards that a little bit too much. So I'll
And that's
reassess
really
that.
good
But
you've done it in that way of like 6 months, not like
mm,
forever kind of thing. Because I think then
mm,
that's another thing to be hard on yourself about if you
absolutely.
change your mind
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
Which I think is always really important to have that choice of like, I'm gonna try
yeah.
this. And if it doesn't work out,
Well, it so works. It
yeah,
is
well
literally,
done.
my husband's doing it with me.
Oh, is he? Very
Yeah, he
good.
is actually. So it's really great actually that he's doing it with me. Otherwise, I think I would be a little green-eyed at some points. But just actually really understanding the nervous system, really understanding how doing what you can to look after yourself really, really does enable you to have that breath between the kids doing something or a tough night and how you respond. And I always say, I was like, caveat, I want to caveat everything that I say with more of the time, not all of the time. And I think it's helping more of the time, not all of the time. I
Mm.
still shout and lose my cool at points and behave and respond in a way that I am sad about. But I see that as a little flag that pops up and says you need something here, Anna,
Yeah.
or you're hormonal and you just need to go a little bit easier on yourself and cut some corners or whatever that may be. But yeah, I think the biggest gift that we can give ourselves is to really understand how our bodies work, how our nervous systems work, and what some of those tweaks, changes, swaps are that we can actually give ourselves the best chance at feeling calm.
Yeah. I love that because I realized I was drinking the same sort of coffee levels I was when I was a real sleep deprived mum.
Yeah.
And so I now have one in the morning and that's it. And my friend was like, why would you do that? And I was like, it's just another thing I've learned
Yes.
isn't good for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Because actually, coffee and caffeine, what it does to your body is the same. It gives you the same symptoms as anxiety. It's that kind of like
Yeah.
revved up,
And
nervous
I'm an
system
anxious person,
heightened.
clearly.
Yeah. So
So why would I do
well,
that?
exactly. Well, I know. I feel very much that I need to. My coffee intake's just gone up because I just flipping love
Well,
it.
you've done alcohol.
But
You've got to,
yeah,
this is another important highlight. Pick your battles. I haven't done
yes.
alcohol. I've
Just
cut back
go.
a lot, but not
Yeah.
completely.
Go gentle. And also, I think when you're juggling work and kids, and it's allow yourself to learn first. So, when we want to make a change, it can feel really hard because we're kind of battling against our desire to engage in those things because they serve us in some way, right? Alcohol for
Mm,
me was an off switch, at least I thought it was. But the more, so I started learning before I changed anything. I started listening to podcasts, learning and understanding. And then as a result, your desire changes.
mm.
So sometimes it's the kindest way to do it is think, right, I want to make a change, but I feel like I'm fighting against myself. So where can I learn? Where can I really
Just do the
understand?
learning.
How
Yeah.
is this going to benefit me so that actually I want the benefits more
Mm,
than I want the fight? And it makes that fight a lot easier.
yeah. That's so valuable. And that's a good point you touched on working motherhood because this podcast is a lot. There'll be a lot of people who are
Mm.
really struggling to get that balance between, and there isn't a balance, integration,
Yeah.
establish when to work, not to work. And like I said, checking your emails when you're around your kids and what that does to your nervous
Yeah.
system. I've learned a
Yeah.
lot again to say about that, which is more reinforcement for me on how I need to
Yeah.
manage my day. How do you manage yours? Do you work during school hours? Do you have particular times? What's been your learning from doing what you do?
Do you know what? We speak at a time where I've had this massive over Christmas. I deleted Instagram and I was a
Oh,
different
did
person,
you?
Caroline. Like I was a different person. And because these things creep in and they creep up, and our boundaries, they creep. Often it's like that frog in a boiling pan of water and the temperature just slowly gets turned up so it doesn't jump out. Whereas if you would suddenly find yourself with the boundaries where they are now, you'd think, what the heck am I doing? This isn't okay. But it's a slow creeping, I think, because our whole culture is, and the social media and the internet and the online world and our phones, they're designed to keep us there more and more, right? So
Yeah.
unless
Hmm.
we're so vigilant, we're just gonna, like, we're not failing, we're being manipulated, and it's incredibly powerful, far more powerful than we are. So over Christmas, I think it was just a case of like totally switching off and then having to re-download Instagram. And I delayed it like 3 times because physically I would feel panicked at the thought of going back on it because I didn't know where my boundaries, how I would hold these boundaries. And I think sometimes, especially when you're working for yourself as well, there can be a
Mm.
real fear that if you pull back in one area, then everything else will fall apart or you won't get
Yeah.
work. Or so, there's a lot of trust going on right now as I pull back, and I've just realized now my kids are older. I think the younger years felt quite generic in the thoughts that I was having, the feelings I was having, and the experiences that I was putting out there. Whereas now my kids are older and I feel like the challenges that we have are a lot more nuanced. I feel like I want to really honor my children in not sharing some of the specifics of the struggles that we have, especially as a mom of an autistic child. Um, so I decided I didn't really want to share as much of the detail of my day anymore, what I was up
Yeah.
to and
Mm.
how my kids were. And whilst I've never shared them on social media, I have
Mm.
spoken about them. So I've come back and I'm not doing that anymore. And I'm going to be sharing a lot more just quotes. And I've got help a lovely colleague helping me kind of pull some of those quotes from my books and my blogs and all of these things that I've written. So I've really reassessed it, and it's going to look quite different, and that feels quite scary. But I think sometimes, just having these reassessments of where are our boundaries? Are they in line with the values that we have? I want to be present for my kids, yet I'm on the sofa doing emails and I'm cooking their dinner whilst, replying to DMs. Is that often, we override that little voice inside of us, or that feeling in our gut that just feels a bit
Yeah.
we
This
get to the
isn't
end of
good
the
for
day, we
me.
want to throw our phone out the window, and
Yeah.
that's saying something. And I think it's this, what we call in psychology, is like this cognitive dissonance, is this awareness that what you're doing isn't really in line with what you want to be doing. So for me, bringing a lot of intentionality, asking myself, what do I want to be going? Anna, do you really want to check your email right now? Do you really want to go on Instagram right now? And having boundaries that I don't go on either before 9 a.m. and after a certain time in the evening. And it's hard because we're wired to do the same thing. So my thumbs will find its way there and I'll catch myself. So, it's just starting to ask ourselves, is this what you really want? Is this what I really want to be doing right now? And knowing that when we lump these things together, when I lump my DMs together and I lump my emails together, actually it's so much more efficient.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so much more
Because,
efficient.
yeah. And I love that. I feel like you're in speaking of seasons, a new season, Anna, that you've
Mm,
like entered into that
yeah.
will kind of, and you can share this sorts of stuff and the journey you've gone on with that. And I know many will relate. And I was going to ask you what's next, but I feel like this is like what's next
Yeah.
for you is
Seeing
just
what
this new
seeing what
season.
happens. Yeah, seeing what goes. And I think sometimes, there can be fear. If I change this, how will it impact that? But I
Yes,
think,
hugely.
I've got to keep my eye on the bottom line of finances, make sure I'm ticking the bottom line boxes, and then just actually protect those boundaries, because what is more important isn't necessarily earning that little bit extra. And that's a real privilege for me, of where my bottom line can be. But is actually, I don't know what happened tomorrow in life. I've lost a sibling. Who knows what will happen tomorrow? But I want to be able to. My mum says to me, I look back and I have no regrets on how I parented, how present I was. And I think, man, I don't think I can say that.
I don't
Yeah.
think
So
I
I've
can
got,
say that
yeah. So
already.
I've got
Yeah.
that in my mind, that conversation I had with her, and I don't know what will happen tomorrow. And I don't say that to live in fear. I just say that to bring perspective of how is what you're doing now and the decisions that you make, those little momentary decisions, how in line with your real heart, passion, vision, desires for your life and your family. How in line are they? Because it's these little decisions that we make that often find us in that place of feeling uncomfortable, because we know we're not being true to ourselves and authentic to our values. So yeah, I have that ringing in my ears, what my mum says, that she has no regrets. And I want to be able to say that. And I can't say that looking back. And I want to be able to say that, from this stage in my life, that I made some changes and I built my business to this point, but it came at a cost. And now I want to step out almost in faith of changing the boundaries and seeing what happens. And if it all goes to pot, I can start seeing clients again in my living room, and it'll
I
be
love
okay.
that. It's such a great thank you for sharing. It's kind of like it came at a cost to build it to a certain place, I think. But also, I've always had this with my business as well. If it all goes to pot, I can be a VA again and start
Yes.
seeing clients. And that's,
Yes.
and and there will be people that have me and it will just look different. And I think that's
Yeah.
always actually like served me well when starting a business because I failed before. And if you fail, and I think that's I was going to ask you to like share something, but I think we've already got to this point of like
Yeah.
that, you're going through a new season, something might change. You won't fail, Anna, but if it did, that's okay. And that's a real
Yeah.
level of confidence you've got to. So thank you for sharing because
Oh,
that's a
thank
real
you. It's definitely, I think confidence is often quite wavering, but we just have to really hold on to the things that we know to be true. Is that to this point in life is worked out. Maybe sometimes not in the way that we expect or the way that we hope, but we're okay.
yeah.
And, you know, when it comes at a cost of feeling present with your kids or feeling lacking ease in yourself and feeling like you're not being authentic, then that's a real high cost. That's a real high cost. So what little decisions can you make in the moment that feel more aligned with that? And who knows where you'll end up? But at the end of the day, there will be a job somewhere doing something that enables you to tick those boxes. So yeah,
That's so
just
true.
hold things loosely, and just keep checking in with yourself.
Yeah. And you speak so highly of your mum, so I have no doubts that your kids will do the same one day. So,
Oh,
and
thank
you
you. I
can say
hope
the
so.
same.
I'm trying. We're just doing our best, aren't we?
That is the dream. And
Oh, thank you.
Anna, honestly, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, I learned a lot, reaffirmed a lot with me as
Yeah.
well about my path, and I hope I know there will be for others. And where can people find you? Where would you like to send people to if they want to learn more or they're interested in more about discovering their journey and path?
Yeah, so it's all Anna Mathur on Instagram, and there's a little thing in the bio, and it takes you to the podcast, which are all like 10-20 minute episodes, and books and courses, and it's all there. It's
Get
all
your
there. So
moments
go
of
there.
rest by listening to the podcast and reading your
Yes,
books. See,
yes, and
that's
lots of
much better than
ideas.
scrolling.
Yes, absolutely. Go out for a walk and listen to some nurturing words, and
Yes,
you'll do
yeah.
better
Oh,
for it. Thanks for having me.
no, thank you so
Thank you.
much. And yeah, thank you and good luck with your next season.